The call dropped before Marina could say anything. On the other end of the line, Ryan had hung up abruptly, as he had been doing lately whenever she tried to talk about something important. She remained seated in the dim light of the office she kept locked at home, staring at the computer screen that displayed numbers and graphs representing years of silent work. There were no tears in her eyes. There hadn't been tears for a long time. Somewhere in Portland, Oregon, her husband was probably laughing with that woman, Carla Monahan. Marina knew her name, her face, every detail of her husband's mistress's life. She knew where she worked as a boutique manager in the Pearl District. She knew she drank almond milk lattes every morning. She knew she posted provocative photos on social media with captions about deserving the best in life. Marina knew everything because she had become an expert at knowing her enemies. What none of them knew was that the pitiful Marina had stopped being pitiful exactly 4 years ago. It all started on a Thursday afternoon when Marina still believed her marriage could be saved. She had gone to take lunch to Ryan at Cooper Industries, the technology company where he held the position of CFO. It was a simple gesture, desperate perhaps, an attempt to reclaim something she felt slipping through her fingers like fine sand. Upon entering the glass and steel building in downtown Portland, she heard his unmistakable laughter coming from the conference room. The door was ajar. Marina should have knocked, should have announced her presence. Instead, she froze upon hearing Carla's voice. "When are you finally going to get rid of that wife of yours? The poor thing must be at home waiting for you with dinner ready, like an obedient little dog." Ryan's laughter echoed through the glass walls. "Marina isn't going anywhere. She has nowhere to go. Without me, she's nothing. Dependent. No career, no money of her own. It's easier to keep things as they are. You have everything I need, Carla, without the complications of an expensive divorce." Marina didn't remember how she had left the building. She didn't remember the drive back home, a modern house in the Lake Oswego suburbs that Ryan loved to show off to friends. What she did remember was the feeling of numbness giving way to something different. It wasn't pain. It was clarity. That night, while Ryan worked late, probably in Carla's arms, Marina opened her laptop for the first time in years, with a purpose other than looking for recipes or managing household accounts. She started researching stocks, investments, financial markets, corporate strategies. She had a degree in business administration that she had abandoned when she married Ryan 10 years ago, at his request, as he insisted he would take care of everything. But Marina had been a brilliant student, and memory was something she had in spades. In the following months, Marina transformed. While Ryan saw her only as the submissive wife who prepared dinner and kept the house impeccable, she studied. She woke up at 5 in the morning, before him, and immersed herself in online courses on finance and the stock market. When Ryan went out for another happy hour that stretched into the early hours, Marina watched investor lectures and analyzed corporate reports. She discovered she had a natural talent for numbers and strategy. More than that, she discovered she had a hunger to prove something to herself, to reclaim the identity she had gradually lost over a decade of marriage. The initial money came from a modest inheritance her grandmother had left, $25,000 that Marina kept in a separate account. Ryan never asked about that money, never showed enough interest in her financial life beyond depositing a monthly sum for household expenses. He was too busy being the magnanimous provider. He liked to tell friends how he supported his wife, how she completely depended on him. Marina took those $25,000 and started investing. Small amounts first, testing strategies, learning from every mistake. She was careful, methodical, patient. In 6 months, she had doubled the initial amount. In a year, she had $100,000. It was then that she discovered something interesting about Cooper Industries. The company was undergoing a silent restructuring. Several minority shareholders were selling their stakes, nervous about rumors of instability. Marina saw an opportunity where others saw risk. She created an LLC, a shell company with a generic name, Pacific Northwest Holdings. No one would know that behind that entity was Marina Fletcher, the invisible wife of the CFO. She began buying shares of Cooper Industries discreetly, through different brokers, in small lots that wouldn't attract attention. Ryan would come home complaining about work, about the nervous shareholders, about pressure from the board. Marina served dinner, listened attentively, asked the right questions. Every piece of information he let slip, every detail about the company's operations, she stored away and used to refine her strategy. "You wouldn't understand these things, darling," Ryan would say whenever she asked about something more technical, as if speaking to a child. "It's too complicated. Focus on doing what you do best, taking care of the house." Marina smiled and nodded, while mentally calculating her next stock acquisition. Carla, in turn, had become increasingly bold. Marina would sometimes see her when she drove through the Pearl District. The woman was tall, blonde, and wore expensive clothes that Ryan probably paid for. She posted photos on social media of sophisticated restaurants, of weekends in Cannon Beach, always with enigmatic captions about enjoying life with those who deserve it. Once, Marina saw them together entering a downtown hotel. Ryan had said he had a conference in Seattle that weekend. Marina took a discreet photo, not out of pain or anger, but as evidence. Documentation. She was building something and needed every piece in the right place. The years passed. 2, 3, 4 years of meticulous work. Ryan continued his double life, growing increasingly careless, more arrogant. Carla became more vocal about her plans to finally conquer Ryan completely, and Marina continued buying shares of Cooper Industries, one at a time, quietly building an empire no one suspected existed. She diversified her investments, created multiple income streams. Her portfolio grew to 500,000, then 1 million. Ryan noticed nothing. Why would he? His wife was still there every morning, making coffee, asking about his day, maintaining the perfect facade of domesticity. Until the moment arrived. Marina had calculated everything carefully. She now owned 43% of Cooper Industries shares, strategically acquired over the years through her network of shell companies. There were 2 more relevant shareholders, each with 20%, with whom she had cultivated discreet relationships over the months. They were ready to vote with her when the time came. Marina controlled her husband's company, and he had no idea. Friday arrived with a fine rain that covered Portland like a translucent veil. Marina woke up before her alarm, as always, but this time it wasn't to study financial reports or analyze market movements. Today she simply watched the bedroom ceiling, feeling the weight of the silence beside her. Ryan hadn't come home the night before. It wasn't uncommon, but this time there was something different in the air, a subtle shift she could feel on her skin. Her phone rang at 9 in the morning. Marina was in the kitchen, making coffee she knew she wouldn't drink, maintaining the routine purely out of habit. She saw his name on the screen and answered with the carefully modulated voice of the understanding wife she had learned to portray so well. "Marina, we need to talk." There were no preliminaries, no apologies for his absence. Ryan's voice carried that arrogant confidence he always had, that unshakable certainty that the world would bend to his will. Marina gripped the phone tighter, but her voice remained calm, almost indifferent. "About what?" "Not on the phone. I'll stop by the house at 2 o'clock. He hung up before she could reply. Marina placed the phone on the Italian marble countertop that Ryan had insisted on installing, saying she deserved the best. Everything had always been about image, about what others would see and think. The successful husband who provided a luxurious life for his wife, never about what she truly wanted or needed. She walked to the locked office, the only space in the house that was truly hers. The walls were lined with monitors and documents organized in meticulous files. Graphs showed the steady rise of her assets over the years. Marina opened the main Cooper Industries file and reviewed the numbers for the 100th time. 43% of the shares. The agreement signed with the other 2 main shareholders, Leonard Pritchard and Susan Yang, each committed to voting with her on crucial decisions. Everything was documented, verified, protected by lawyers she had discreetly hired. The divorce was coming. Marina had known this for months, had prepared every detail for this moment. Ryan had finally decided it was time to exchange his dedicated wife for his glamorous mistress. Carla had probably given him an ultimatum, tired of being the other woman, wanting to publicly assume the role of Mrs. Fletcher. Let him come, Marina thought, closing the office and locking the door with the key she always kept with her. Let him believe he still controls everything. Ryan arrived promptly at 2, driving the black Tesla she knew he had bought as an early birthday present for himself. He walked in through the door without knocking, as if he still completely owned that space, that life. Marina was sitting in the living room, her hands elegantly clasped in her lap, her posture erect but not tense. She had learned a lot about body language in recent years, about how to project exactly the image she desired. Marina. He didn't sit down, remaining standing, probably to maintain a position of power. Ryan was 42, with brown hair beginning to grey at the temples in a way he found distinguished. He wore a perfectly tailored grey suit and that air of superiority that always annoyed her, but which she had learned to ignore. I'm going to be direct because I respect you too much to beat around the bush. The irony of the statement almost elicited a smile from her, but Marina maintained a neutral expression, only slightly curious. I want a divorce. Silence. Marina let the words hang in the air for a few seconds before responding, carefully gauging her reaction. She couldn't appear too calm, it would be suspicious. Nor too emotional, she wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Why? Her voice came out low, with only a calculated tremor. Ryan sighed, as if dealing with a difficult situation that bothered him but was necessary. We both know this hasn't been working for years. I've met someone who understands me in a way you never could. Marina lowered her gaze, biting her lower lip slightly. The hurt wife, the rejected woman. It was important that he believed this, that he left certain he had broken her heart once again. Carla. It wasn't a question, but Ryan seemed surprised she knew the name. He recovered quickly, arrogance returning to his face. Yes, Carla makes me happy, Marina. She's independent, ambitious, understands my world. You're a wonderful person, but we're simply not compatible. Marina forced tears to her eyes, years of practice making the gesture almost natural. And financially? How do you expect this to work? That's when Ryan smiled. That smile she had learned to hate. Condescending, almost paternal. Look, I'm not going to leave you destitute. You can keep the house. I'll provide a monthly alimony of $5,000 for 2 years until you get back on your feet. It's more than fair considering you didn't contribute financially to our marriage. $5,000. Marina almost laughed. Her portfolio generated more than that in daily dividends, but she merely nodded slowly, wiping away an imaginary tear. What if I don't want the divorce? Ryan crossed his arms, his patience clearly running out. Marina, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You don't have a choice. Without me, you have nothing. No career, no money of your own, no prospects. I'm being generous, offering support for you to get back on your feet. But this is going to happen one way or another. The threat was there, veiled but clear. Marina stood up slowly, walking to the window that overlooked the perfectly maintained garden. Outside, the roses she herself had planted bloomed in vibrant shades of red and pink. She had cared for them with patience, waiting years until the roots were strong enough to withstand any storm. All right. Ryan blinked, clearly expecting more resistance. All right. Marina turned to face him, and for the first time allowed a glimpse of truth to show in her eyes. Not anger, not pain, just an absolute, almost glacial calm. You're right. This hasn't been working for years. I'll sign the papers. The look of relief on his face was almost comical. Ryan approached as if to embrace her in a gesture of consolation, but Marina took a step back, small, subtle but definitive. I'll ask my lawyer to prepare everything. We can resolve this civilly, without complications. Ryan was already checking his phone, his attention already divided, already moving on. "You'll see, Marina. This is for the best for both of us. You'll find someone who deserves you." After he left, Marina remained standing in the living room for a long moment. Then slowly, she walked to the bathroom and washed her face, looking at her own reflection in the mirror. At 35, she still saw traces of the young woman who had married full of hopes and dreams. But now there was something different there, something stronger, sharper. She picked up the phone and made a call. "Leonard? It's Marina Fletcher. I'd like to schedule that meeting we discussed." "Yes. Monday works perfectly. Gather the board. It's time for some changes at Cooper Industries." At that moment, somewhere in the Pearl District, Carla Monahan was probably celebrating, posting enigmatic photos on social media, planning her future as Mrs. Ryan Fletcher. She had no idea she was celebrating a victory that would last exactly 3 days. Marina opened a bottle of wine she kept for special occasions, poured a glass, and toasted her reflection in the window alone. The game had begun years ago, when everyone thought she was just watching from the sidelines. But Marina was never a spectator. She was the player no one saw taking position, the strategist who planned every move while everyone underestimated her. Monday would be interesting. The weekend passed with torturous slowness for Marina, each hour dragging as if time itself were testing her patience. She maintained her usual routine, watering the garden on Saturday morning, going to the market in the afternoon, preparing meals she would eat alone. To any neighbor observing, she was just Marina Fletcher, the recently abandoned wife trying to maintain composure as her world crumbled. But behind the closed doors of her office, Marina was sharpening her final weapons. She reviewed every document one more time. The agreements with Leonard Pritchard and Susan Yang were impeccable, each clause verified by 3 different lawyers she had hired under pseudonyms. Her controlling stake was solidified through such a complex network of shell companies and holdings that it would take months for anyone to trace the line back to her. Marina had learned a lot observing her husband over the years, but she had learned even more by studying those who were better than him. Ryan called on Saturday night. His voice slurred with what she recognized as expensive whiskey and self-satisfaction. He wanted to confirm that she was all right, that she wouldn't make a scene, that everything would be resolved maturely. Marina assured him she would, her voice carefully modulated between resignation and wounded dignity. She could hear him relax on the other end of the line, hear the exact moment he convinced himself that he had made the right choice, that he was in control of the situation. Let him believe, Marina thought, hanging up the phone and returning to her monitors. Let him have this weekend of celebration. Sunday dawned with a gray sky typical of autumn in Portland, but Marina woke up feeling something she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't anxiety, although there was adrenaline coursing through her veins. It wasn't fear, although she was about to take the riskiest step of her life. It was something purer, more visceral. It was the feeling of being finally, completely alive. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant navy blue dress, mid-heel shoes, discreet earrings, the Marina everyone knew, whom no one truly saw. For now. Tomorrow, she would wear different armor. The afternoon was spent in meticulous preparation. Marina printed documents, organized folders, checked and rechecked numbers. She mentally rehearsed every possible scenario for tomorrow's meeting, every potential objection, every move Ryan might make. Chess, she had learned, wasn't just about the pieces on the board, but about anticipating moves before they happened. At 8 that evening, her phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. Marina hesitated before opening it, but immediately recognized the tone when she read the words. "I hope you're enjoying your last days of luxury, darling. Some of us need to work for what we have instead of depending on men. But don't worry. I'm sure you'll find someone to take care of you. It's what you do best, isn't it?" Carla. Marina reread the message 3 times, analyzing each word, each deliberate choice of language. The mistress was feeling confident enough to provoke her directly now. Ryan had probably given her Marina's number, perhaps even encouraged the contact. A final blow to the discarded wife, an assertion of victory. Marina typed and deleted several replies before finally settling on a simple one. I wish you both the best. She could almost imagine Carla's satisfaction upon reading those words, the feeling of absolute triumph. Perfect. The more confident they were, the more devastating the fall would be. That night Marina couldn't sleep, not out of nervousness, but out of pure anticipation. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, mentally going over every step of what would happen in the next 24 hours. At 3 a.m, she gave up trying to sleep and went to the kitchen, making strong coffee and sitting on the marble island that Ryan loved to show off so much. The house was silent, only the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood breaking the stillness. Marina looked around, truly seeing for the first time in years. This house had never truly been hers, she realized. It was a set, a stage built for the life Ryan wanted to project. Expensive but uncomfortable furniture, art chosen by decorators instead of personal preference, each room perfectly coordinated and utterly devoid of real personality. She wouldn't miss this place. As the gray light of dawn began to filter through the windows, Marina went upstairs to prepare herself. The bath was long, methodical, almost ritualistic. She washed her hair twice, applied imported conditioner that cost a fortune, exfoliated her skin until it glowed. Every action was deliberate, a preparation for the transformation that was to come. From the closet, she chose an outfit she had bought 3 months ago, anticipating this moment. A perfectly tailored black Armani suit that hugged her curves without being provocative. A white silk shirt, discreet pearl buttons, black Louboutin shoes with that touch of red on the sole that few would see, but that she would know was there. Each piece was a statement, an armor of power and control. Marina applied her makeup with surgical precision, flawless foundation, eyeliner that accentuated her brown eyes, dark red lipstick she would normally never wear. Her hair, usually loose and simple, was pulled back into an elegant and severe bun. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. This was not the Marina Fletcher Ryan knew. This was someone else. Someone who had always been there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. At 7:15 in the morning, Marina was in the garage, sitting in her own car, a silver Mercedes C-Class that Ryan had bought for her 2 years ago. He thought it was a generous gift, a demonstration of his magnanimity. He didn't know Marina could buy 10 of those cars without even feeling the impact on her bank account. Cooper Industries was located in downtown Portland, a 15-story glass and steel building that reflected the city's constantly changing sky. Marina had been there countless times over the years, always as Ryan's wife, always invisible, always irrelevant. Today would be different. She arrived at 7:45, 15 minutes before the meeting scheduled for 8. Leonard Pritchard was already in the lobby, a 60-year-old man with perfectly coiffed white hair and a suit that cost more than a small car. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Marina, but he quickly composed himself, extending his hand with a professional smile. Mrs. Fletcher, or should I say, Ms. Westbrook? Marina had used her maiden name for all transactions related to Pacific Northwest Holdings. Westbrook. She smiled, shaking his hand firmly. Marina is fine, Leonard. Thank you for organizing everything so quickly. When the company's largest shareholder requests a meeting, there's no choice but to be swift. He lowered his voice, although the lobby was practically empty. All board members have been summoned. Ryan, too. He thinks it's about departmental restructuring. Susan Yang arrived moments later, an Asian-American woman in her early 40s, with short black hair and eyes that missed no detail. She greeted Marina with a respectful, almost admiring nod. Impressive work, Marina. When Leonard first showed me the numbers, I didn't believe anyone could have amassed so much without leaving obvious traces. I had good teachers, Marina replied, and there was an irony in the statement that only she truly understood. unwittingly, but good teachers nonetheless. The three ascended together in the elevator, the silence heavy with anticipation. Marina watched the numbers light up as they rose, each floor bringing them closer to the moment she had meticulously planned for 4 years. Her heart beat steadily, constantly. There was no room for doubt now, only for perfect execution. The 14th floor conference room was all glass, with panoramic views of Portland stretching in every direction. The polished mahogany table could seat 20 people, but today there were only 8 chairs occupied when Marina entered. 5 board members, Leonard, Susan, and an empty chair next to the company's CEO, Marcus Webb, and Ryan. He was standing by the window, checking something on his phone, probably a message from Carla. When he heard the door open, he turned casually, expecting to see perhaps an assistant or secretary. His face cycled through a series of expressions when he saw Marina, starting with confusion, then surprise, and finally something close to irritation. "Marina? What are you doing here?" He looked at Marcus Webb, as if the CEO could explain why his soon-to-be ex-wife had appeared at a confidential corporate meeting. "Marcus, I don't understand what—" "Mr. Fletcher, please sit down." Marcus Webb was a man in his 50s, with the calm demeanor of someone who had navigated decades of corporate politics. "There are some important developments that need to be discussed this morning." Marina walked calmly to the chair at the head of the table, opposite Marcus. It was a position of power, a visual statement even before any words were spoken. She placed her Italian leather folder on the table, opened it with precise movements, and took out a stack of perfectly organized documents. Ryan was still standing, looking between her and the others in the room with growing alarm. "Seriously, what's going on here? Marina, if you're trying to cause some kind of scene because of the divorce—" "Mr. Fletcher, sit down." This time it was Leonard who spoke, and there was an authority in his voice that left no room for argument. Marina watched her husband slowly take his seat, saw confusion giving way to something darker in his eyes. He was starting to realize that something was wrong, that there were layers to this situation he didn't understand. Good. Let him wonder. Let him feel the first pang of uncertainty. Marcus Webb cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending on such short notice. This meeting has been called to discuss significant changes in Cooper Industries' ownership and leadership structure." He paused, looking directly at Ryan. "Changes that will affect all levels of the organization." Marina kept her hands clasped on the table, her expression calm and professional. Inside, every nerve was on alert, every sense heightened. This was the moment. Years of preparation, of silent sacrifice, of calculated underestimation, all converging on the next few minutes. She looked at Ryan across the table, finally allowing herself to meet his eyes directly. And for the first time in 4 years, she didn't look away first. Marcus Webb adjusted his glasses and opened the folder before him, his movements deliberately slow, creating a palpable tension in the conference room. Ryan tapped his fingers on the mahogany table, a nervous tic Marina had learned to recognize over the years as a sign of growing impatience. He still didn't understand what was happening, but his body language betrayed the discomfort of being in unfamiliar territory. "Before we officially begin," Marcus continued, his voice filling the silence with measured authority, "I'd like to formally introduce our special guest this morning. While some of you may recognize her as Marina Fletcher, wife of our CFO, she is here today in a very different capacity." Ryan let out a short laugh, more nervous than genuinely amused. "Marcus, with all due respect, I don't understand what my wife has to do with corporate matters. If this is some kind of—" He stopped abruptly when Leonard Pritchard raised his hand in a silencing gesture. "Mr. Fletcher, I suggest you listen before you speak. What is to be discussed today is of extreme importance to your future at this company." Marina watched the color drain slightly from Ryan's face. He looked around the table, finally starting to realize that everyone there knew something he didn't. His gaze rested on her for a longer moment, searching for clues. trying to read the woman he thought he knew so well. Susan Yang was next to speak, opening her laptop and projecting a presentation onto the glass wall behind Marcus. Graphs began to appear, ascending lines showing stock acquisitions over the past 4 years. As you can see, there has been significant movement in Cooper Industries shares during this period. Multiple entities acquired stakes through various channels, something that didn't attract much attention initially due to the dispersed nature of the transactions. Ryan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the graphs. Marina could see the gears turning in his mind, the financial executive desperately trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle he didn't know existed. These acquisitions were all legal, Ryan said, his voice regaining some of its usual confidence. Minority shareholders selling their stakes is not uncommon during periods of market uncertainty. We monitor all of this. There's nothing irregular. You are absolutely correct, Marcus agreed, his expression remaining neutral. There is nothing irregular. In fact, these were transactions exceptionally well executed. The interesting thing is not the legality, Mr. Fletcher, but rather the identity behind these acquisitions. Susan clicked to the next slide, and this time a complex network of interconnected companies appeared. Pacific Northwest Holdings at the center, branching out into dozens of other entities, each with its own subsidiaries and connections. It was like looking at a meticulously constructed spiderweb, each strand serving a specific purpose. This is the corporate structure of Pacific Northwest Holdings and its associated companies, Susan explained, using a laser pointer to highlight different elements. Over the past 4 years, this network has collectively acquired 43% of Cooper Industries shares. The silence that followed was absolute. Ryan remained completely still, his eyes fixed on the screen, processing the information. Marina watched the exact moment when the realization began to form, saw disbelief give way to understanding, and then to growing horror. 43%, he repeated slowly, his voice almost a whisper. That's not possible. I would have. We would have detected an acquisition of that magnitude. Who is behind Pacific Northwest Holdings? Marcus turned to Marina, making an inviting gesture with his hand. I think it would be more appropriate if the owner herself explained. All eyes in the room turned to Marina. She remained seated for another moment, savoring the expression on Ryan's face as the pieces finally clicked into place in his mind. She could see the exact instant he connected the dots, when the impossibility of what he was witnessing collided with the irrefutable evidence before him. No, Ryan said, his voice gaining volume, denial and anger mingling in equal measure. No, this is ridiculous. Marina has no money of her own. She has no financial knowledge. She has no. He stopped, swallowing hard, as if the words were stuck in his throat. Marina finally stood up, picking up a remote control that lay beside her briefcase. She switched Susan's presentation for her own, and the first image that appeared was a photograph of herself holding a business administration degree from Portland State University, taken 15 years ago. Young, full of ambition, before Ryan convinced her to abandon her professional dreams. You are right on some points, Ryan, Marina began, her voice surprisingly firm, without a trace of nervousness. I had no money of my own when I started. $25,000 from my grandmother's inheritance is not exactly an impressive initial capital, and you always assumed I had no financial knowledge because you never bothered to ask about my education, about what I studied before we got married. She clicked to the next slide, showing certifications and online courses completed over the past 4 years. Investment analysis, corporate strategy, capital markets, each with recognized dates and institutions. While you were busy underestimating your wife, I was studying. While you were with Carla, celebrating how dependent and futureless I was building an empire that you couldn't even see, even when the reports crossed your desk. Ryan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. This is fraud. You used insider information, had access to confidential documents through me. This is illegal, and I will. You'll do what, exactly? Leonard Pritchard interrupted, his voice cutting through Ryan's outburst like a sharp blade. Accuse your wife of using information you voluntarily shared in domestic conversations? Information that, I might add, has all been verified as public knowledge or deducible through standard market analysis. Susan nodded, opening another folder. We've had 3 independent law firms review every transaction Ms. Westbrook made over the past 4 years. Everything is absolutely legal. She never accessed company systems, never stole documents, never violated any securities regulations. She was simply an exceptionally talented investor who did her research meticulously. Marina advanced to the next slide, now showing performance charts. My portfolio had a 1,200% return on investment in 4 years. Not through insider trading or manipulation, but through careful analysis, precise market timing, and strategic diversification. I learned by observing not just you, Ryan, but by studying investors better than you. The final sentence was deliberate, a jab at the ego she knew to be his most vulnerable point. Ryan turned red, his hands clenching the edges of the table hard enough to whiten his knuckles. So what? He spat, anger now completely overcoming incredulity. You did all this for revenge? To punish me for Carla? This is pathetic, Marina. Even if you bought these shares, you can't just fire me. I have contracts, protections, years of exemplary service. Marcus Webb coughed delicately, drawing attention back to himself. Actually, Mr. Fletcher, we need to discuss exactly that. As CFO, you do indeed have a robust contract. However, there are specific clauses that allow for termination under certain circumstances. Marina sat down again, crossing her hands on the table in a gesture she had practiced countless times. Calm, controlled, impenetrable. The issue is not just my shareholding, Ryan. It's also the fact that Leonard and Susan, who together control an additional 40%, have agreed to vote with me on all major company decisions. That gives us 83% control. We are, effectively, Cooper Industries now. Ryan looked at Leonard and Susan as if seeing them for the first time. Betrayal mixed with disbelief etched on every line of his face. You knew about this? You were conspiring with her behind my back? It wasn't a conspiracy, Leonard corrected, his voice cold. It was business. Ms. Westbrook presented us with a vision for the company's future that is substantially more attractive than the current direction. Furthermore, he paused meaningfully, she showed us certain irregularities in recent financial reports that are concerning. The blood drained completely from Ryan's face. Irregularities? What irregularities? All our reports have been externally audited, approved by the board. Marina opened her briefcase and pulled out a set of bound documents, sliding them across the table towards Ryan. Unauthorized expenses totaling $143,000 over the last 18 months. Dinners at expensive restaurants, hotel bookings, jewelry from a specific boutique in the Pearl District. All charged as legitimate business expenses, all in fact being gifts for your mistress. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan picked up the documents with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the pages, recognizing each transaction. Marina had highlighted each one in fluorescent yellow, every imprudent expense he had made, thinking no one would ever connect the dots. I have receipts, bank statements, witnesses, Marina continued, her voice never wavering. Enough to prosecute you for embezzlement of corporate funds. Enough to ensure you never work in corporate finance again. Enough to turn this divorce into something far more complicated than you anticipated. Ryan sank back into his chair, the document still in his hands. All arrogance evaporated like dew under the morning sun. He seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 15 minutes, his shoulders hunched, his confidence utterly destroyed. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice reduced to a defeated whisper. Money. I'll pay back every cent. I'll do whatever it takes to remedy this. Marina stood up again, walking slowly around the table until she was directly beside Ryan. She leaned in slightly, her voice low enough so only he could clearly hear. I don't want your money, Ryan. I have my own money now, more than you ever gave me. What I want is to see you understand, truly understand, what it means to be underestimated, discarded, considered worthless. She stepped back, her voice returning to its normal volume, filling the room. But this isn't personal. It's business, as you always used to say. She turned to Marcus Webb, ignoring Ryan completely now. Mr. Webb, I believe we have a motion to vote on. Marcus nodded, regaining his professional composure. Yes. The motion in question is the removal of Ryan Fletcher as CFO of Cooper Industries, effective immediately, due to violations of corporate policy and misuse of company funds. I vote in favor, Marina said without hesitation. In favor, Leonard echoed. In favor, Susan confirmed. The other board members, who had remained silent throughout the revelation, quickly added their votes. There was no need for a formal count. It was unanimous. Marcus Webb gathered his documents, his expression a mixture of professional discomfort and something that might have been reluctant respect for Marina. Mr. Fletcher, effective immediately. You are no longer an employee of Cooper Industries. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. All system accesses have been revoked as of this moment. Ryan remained seated, paralyzed, as if his brain was still trying to process the speed with which his world had crumbled. Marina waited, watching, allowing reality to finally sink in completely. It was only when 2 security guards appeared at the conference room door that Ryan finally reacted, rising with mechanical movements. He looked at Marina one last time, and what she saw in his eyes was no longer anger or disbelief. It was pure recognition. The recognition that he had completely underestimated the woman he had lived with for 10 years, and that this mistake had cost him everything. Marina, he began, but she simply turned her back, returning her attention to the documents in her folder. The security guards guided him gently but firmly out of the room. The glass door closed behind them with a soft, definitive click. The door closed behind Ryan and the security guards, but Marina remained motionless for a long moment, watching the empty corridor through the glass. She expected to feel triumph, perhaps satisfaction, but what filled her chest was something different. It wasn't emptiness, but neither was it the sweet victory she had imagined during all those years of planning. It was simply the feeling of a chapter finally closing, a page turned after being stuck for too long. Marcus Webb broke the silence, organizing his documents with professional efficiency. Ms. Westbrook, there are practical matters we need to discuss. With Mr. Fletcher's departure, we have a critical open position. The role of CFO cannot remain vacant for long, especially with the quarterly closing approaching. Marina finally turned away from the window, giving her full attention back to the room. The board members watched her with a mixture of curiosity and caution, as if they were still processing the transformation of the invisible wife into a majority shareholder. She could read the unasked questions on their faces, the discomfort with the sudden shift in power, the uncertainty about what would come next. I have someone in mind, Marina said, returning to her seat at the head of the table. Vanessa Chen, currently CFO of Cascade Technologies in Seattle. I've been following her work for 2 years. She has impressively transformed their financial structure, increasing efficiency by 30% while reducing operational costs. I took the liberty of making a preliminary approach last week. Susan Yang raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed. Vanessa Chen would be an extraordinary acquisition, but she's very well established in Seattle, with compensation that I imagine is substantial. What would make her consider a change? Marina allowed herself a small smile. I offered her 40% more than she currently earns, equity participation, and complete freedom to restructure the financial department as she sees fit. I also mentioned that she would work directly with me on expanding the company into new markets. Vanessa is ambitious. She wants challenges, not stability. Leonard Pritchard chuckled, a genuine sound of appreciation. You really planned every detail, didn't you? Not just the acquisition, but the complete leadership transition. "I always knew this day would come," Marina replied, opening a new section of her folder. "It would be irresponsible not to be prepared. Vanessa can start in 2 weeks, which gives us time for a proper transition. In the meantime, I have an interim plan." She distributed documents around the table, meticulously prepared pages detailing not only Ryan's replacement, but a complete restructuring of Cooper Industries' operations. New investments in technology, expansion into East Coast markets, strategic partnerships she had discreetly cultivated in recent months. Over the next hour, Marina led the meeting with a confidence that seemed to have been fully formed at birth, but which was in fact the result of years of silent preparation. Every question the board members asked, she had an answer. Every concern they raised she had already considered and had solutions ready. Marcus Webb finally leaned back in his chair, studying Marina with eyes that had seen decades of executives come and go. "I have to admit, Ms. Westbrook, when Leonard first approached me about this situation, I had reservations. Not about the legality of the acquisitions, but about the feasibility of such a dramatic leadership transition. But it's clear you're not just a talented investor. You have real strategic vision for this company." "I had 10 years to study Cooper Industries from the inside," Marina said simply. 10 years seeing what worked, what didn't work, and where opportunities were being wasted. I didn't do this just to punish Ryan. I did it because I saw potential that was being suffocated by complacent leadership. The meeting continued until almost noon, every detail discussed and refined. When it finally concluded, the board members left with expressions that had changed from cautious to genuinely optimistic. Leonard and Susan remained behind, waiting until the room was empty before approaching Marina. "That was impressive," Susan said, her voice softer now that there was no audience. "But what about you, Marina? How are you really feeling about all this?" Marina paused in organizing her documents, considering the question. It was the first time in hours that someone had asked about her as a person, not as a shareholder or strategist. "Honestly, I don't know yet. It's like waking up from a very long dream or perhaps a nightmare. It still doesn't feel completely real." Leonard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What you did today took immense courage, not just the business part, but confronting your husband like that, exposing the betrayal publicly. That can't have been easy." "It was necessary," Marina replied, but her voice wavered slightly for the first time that morning. "He needed to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people as if they are disposable without eventually paying the price." Susan nodded comprehendingly. "And Carla, does she know what happened?" Marina checked her phone, seeing several missed calls from unknown numbers. "Not yet, but she'll know soon. Ryan is probably calling her now, trying to explain how the successful executive she thought she had won just became an unemployed man under investigation for embezzlement." The irony was not lost on the three of them. Carla had ridiculed Marina for being dependent, for not having a future of her own, and now she was the one stuck with a man who had lost everything. Marina left the Cooper Industries building at 12:30, exiting through the underground garage to avoid any possibility of encountering Ryan. The Portland sky was heavy with clouds, threatening rain, but she barely noticed as she drove. Her hands were steady on the wheel, but her mind was racing, processing everything that had happened. Instead of heading straight home, Marina found herself driving to Washington Park, parking near the rose garden that had always been her refuge during the difficult years. She walked along the familiar paths, past meticulously maintained flower beds, each rose variety carefully labeled. There was something comforting in the order and beauty of that place, in the way something so delicate could flourish through careful planning and patience. She found a secluded bench overlooking downtown Portland in the distance, the city stretching out in every direction under the cloudy sky. Marina sat down, finally allowing the tension of the last few hours to begin to dissipate. It was only then, in the quiet solitude of the garden, that the tears came. They weren't tears of sadness exactly, nor of joy. They were tears of liberation, years of repressed emotions finally finding an outlet. Marina cried for the young woman she had been, full of dreams and ambitions she sacrificed for a marriage she thought was love. She cried for the lost years, for the lies she accepted, for the version of herself she had buried so deeply that she almost forgot it existed. But she also cried from relief. Because for the first time in a decade, Marina was completely free. Free from Ryan, free from his expectations, free from the gilded cage her life had become. Her phone vibrated insistently in her pocket. Marina ignored it for several minutes before finally checking. There were messages from Leonard confirming details for the press announcement about the company changes. There were emails from lawyers about the divorce proceedings. And there was a message from a number she recognized as Carla's. Marina hesitated before opening it. The message was long, angry, full of accusations and insults. Carla called her manipulative, vindictive, said Ryan had told her everything about how Marina had destroyed his career out of jealousy. There were veiled threats of lawsuits, public exposure, of making Marina pay for what she had done. Marina read the message twice, then simply deleted it. There was no point in responding, in engaging in that drama. Carla would eventually discover the full truth. When the documents regarding Ryan's embezzlement became public, when she realized that the man she had won was not the prize she had imagined. Instead, Marina typed a message to her lawyer, instructing him to proceed with the divorce using the most favorable terms possible for her. Not for revenge, but because it was time to finally prioritize her own needs. She remained in the garden until early afternoon, when the rain finally began to fall, soft drops quickly turning into a typical Portland downpour. Marina did not hurry to leave, letting the rain wash over her face, mingling with the tears that had already dried. When she finally returned to her car, soaked but strangely at peace, Marina started the engine and simply sat for a moment. She looked at the Cooper Industries building in the distance, her new domain, her revenge transformed into an empire. Then she looked at the wedding ring she still wore, that circle of gold she had carried for 10 years as a symbol of commitment. With deliberate movements, Marina removed the ring, holding it in the palm of her hand for a long moment. Then, she opened the car window and let it drop into the gutter, where it would be carried away by the rain to some unknown and irrelevant place. Free from weight, free from symbols of the past, Marina drove not to the house in Lake Oswego that was never truly hers, but to a hotel in downtown Portland. She needed space, time to process everything. To decide who she would be now that she no longer had to be Ryan Fletcher's wife. As she checked into the luxury suite with a city view, using her own credit card, her own money, Marina felt something settle in her chest. It wasn't the violent triumph she had imagined, but something quieter, deeper. It was the feeling of finally, completely, belonging to herself. The rain had intensified when Marina woke up in the hotel suite, the gray afternoon light filtering through the heavy curtains. She had slept for almost 3 hours, a deep, dreamless sleep that left her body relaxed, but her mind strangely alert. The phone on the bedside table showed 17 missed calls and countless unread messages. Marina rolled over in the king-size bed, feeling the softness of the Egyptian cotton sheets against her skin. It was a simple luxury, but one that somehow symbolized everything that had changed. This room, this bed, this moment of quiet were completely hers, paid for with money she herself had earned, in a space Ryan didn't know and couldn't invade. She reluctantly picked up the phone, knowing she couldn't postpone reality forever. The first message was from Vanessa Chen, the Seattle executive Marina had recruited to replace Ryan. The tone was professional but warm, confirming she had accepted the offer and was excited to start the new position. Marina felt a wave of satisfaction. At least that part of the plan was unfolding perfectly. The next messages were more complicated. Her divorce lawyer had sent a series of urgent texts. Ryan was trying to contest the terms, claiming Marina had hidden assets during the marriage and deserved a more equitable division. The irony almost made Marina laugh out loud. The man who had belittled her for a decade, who insisted she had no professional or financial worth, now wanted a share of the empire she had built herself. There were also messages from Leonard Pritchard about the logistics of the public announcement of the changes at Cooper Industries. The local business press was already sniffing out the story, speculating about Ryan's sudden departure. Marina would have to make an official statement soon, and the prospect left her simultaneously anxious and determined. But it was the last message that made Marina pause, rereading the words several times. It was from her younger sister, Claire, who lived in Boston, and with whom Marina had spoken less and less over the years of her marriage. Marina, I heard rumors about what happened with Ryan. I don't know all the details, but I want you to know I'm here if you need to talk. I know we haven't been close lately, and much of that is my fault for not pushing harder when you started to withdraw. But you're my sister, and I love you. Call when you can. Marina felt a lump form in her throat. Claire. She had forgotten how much she missed her sister. Honest conversations with someone who knew her before she became Mrs. Fletcher. Ryan had never liked Claire, finding her too independent, too opinionated. Gradually, subtly, he had created distance between the sisters, and Marina had allowed it, too tired to fight for one more thing. She typed a quick reply, promising to call soon, and then forced herself out of bed. The bathroom mirror reflected an image she barely recognized. Her hair was disheveled, the careful morning makeup long since smudged, but there was something different in her eyes. A clarity, a strength that wasn't there before. Marina took a long, hot shower, letting the water ease the tension that still lingered in her muscles. When she emerged, wrapped in a soft hotel robe, she ordered room service. Grilled salmon with roasted vegetables and a glass of white wine. Food she chose because she wanted it, not because it was what Ryan preferred or what would be appropriate to serve. While waiting for her meal to arrive, Marina finally returned the call from her lawyer, Kenneth Torres, a man in his 50s with a ruthless reputation in high-profile divorce cases. Marina, thank you for returning my call. We have interesting developments, Kenneth began, his voice conveying that professional mix of neutrality and sharp strategy. Ryan has hired Daniel Ashford to represent him. Marina knew the name. Ashford was known for being aggressive, for using intimidating tactics, and for representing clients willing to fight dirty. And what does that mean for us? It means he's going to try to paint you as manipulative, as someone who systematically deceived Ryan throughout the marriage. He'll claim you had access to privileged information and that your financial gains were obtained unethically, if not illegally. It's a risky strategy on their part, considering the evidence we have regarding Ryan's embezzlement, but Ashford is known for twisting narratives. Marina sat in the armchair near the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Let him try. We have documentation for every transaction. Every investment decision was based on public research and market analysis. Furthermore, Kenneth, I want you to prepare a counterclaim, not just for the funds Ryan diverted, but for the damage to my reputation over the years, for the social isolation he imposed, for everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line before Kenneth responded, and when he did, Marina detected something akin to approval in his voice. This is going to get ugly, Marina. Public and ugly. Are you prepared for that? I've spent 4 years preparing for this moment, Kenneth. I'm not backing down now. The meal arrived minutes after she hung up, brought by a young hotel employee who treated her with the deference reserved for important guests. Marina ate slowly, savoring each bite, allowing herself this moment of normalcy before plunging back into the chaos her life had become. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Susan Yang, with a link to an article in the Portland Business Journal. The title made Marina's heart race. Mysterious executive takes control of Cooper Industries in dramatic turnaround. The article was surprisingly detailed, citing anonymous sources within the company. It speculated about the identity behind Pacific Northwest Holdings, mentioned Ryan Fletcher's sudden dismissal, and painted a portrait of corporate intrigue worthy of a thriller. There was even a grainy photograph of Marina leaving the Cooper Industries building that morning, her serious and determined expression captured by the photographer. The comments below the article were a mixture of speculation and admiration. Some defended Ryan, others celebrated the rise of new female leadership in Portland's tech world. Marina read each comment, processing how her story was being interpreted by strangers who didn't know half the truth. A pop-up notification appeared on the screen. Carla had posted something on social media. Against her better judgment, Marina clicked the link. The post was a selfie of Carla, her face perfectly made up but with eyes that betrayed anger and confusion. The caption read, "When you find out some people are snakes in disguise, be careful who you underestimate, because they might be more venomous than you think." Marina almost laughed at the irony. Carla still didn't fully understand what had happened, still focused on painting her as a villain. It didn't matter. The truth would eventually come out, especially when the details about Ryan's embezzlement of funds became public. The phone rang again, this time a video call from Claire. Marina hesitated only a second before answering, mentally preparing herself for the conversation she knew was inevitable. Her sister's face appeared on the screen, and Marina was immediately transported back to a simpler time. Claire had the same brown eyes as her, but where Marina had learned to hide her emotions, Claire had always been an open book. And now those eyes were filled with worry and sisterly love. "Marina," Claire began, her voice wavering, "I saw the news. The article about Cooper Industries. It's you, isn't it? Are you the mysterious executive?" Marina nodded slowly, feeling something break inside her. It was one thing to maintain a facade for the world, but quite another to hide the truth from her own sister. "It's a long story, Claire." "Then tell me. I have time." Claire settled onto her sofa, and Marina recognized the Boston apartment in the background, a small but cozy space Claire always kept filled with plants and books. "And Marina, before you start, I need to apologize. I let you drift away. I saw Ryan slowly isolating you, I saw you changing, and I didn't do enough to fight for our relationship. I'm sorry." The tears Marina had held back all day finally began to fall, silent but cathartic. And then she told everything. She started with the afternoon she'd overheard Ryan and Carla laughing at her, continued through the years of secret study and careful investments, culminating in this morning's meeting where everything finally came to light. Claire listened without interrupting, her own tears joining Marina's as the story unfolded. "My God, Marina," Claire finally said when she finished. "You are incredible, and I was an idiot for letting that man drive a wedge between us. But that ends now. Do you hear me? No matter what happens from now on, we're sisters again. For real." Marina smiled through her tears, feeling something heal inside her. "I'd like that." They talked for another hour, Claire sharing updates about her own life as a university professor in Boston, speaking about a recent boyfriend who was kind and supportive in ways that made Marina realize how much had been missing from her own marriage. It was comforting, normal, a reminder that there was life beyond corporate drama and carefully planned revenge. When they finally hung up, with Claire making Marina promise to keep in daily contact, the hotel suite felt less lonely. Marina walked over to the panoramic window, watching Portland spread out below her in the deepening darkness. The city lights began to flicker on, creating a pattern of terrestrial constellations. Her phone vibrated once more. This time it was Leonard, sending the schedule for the press conference set for tomorrow morning. Marina would officially be introduced as the largest shareholder and new strategic director of Cooper Industries. There would be questions, speculation, public judgment. It would be difficult and exposed and frightening. But as Marina watched her reflection in the window, superimposed over the city view that now saw her in a completely different light, she felt something solidify within her. It wasn't just confidence or determination. It was acceptance. Acceptance of who she had been, who she had become, and who she would yet be. She had spent years being invisible, underestimated, discarded. Tomorrow, the whole world would know her name, and this time, it would be on her own terms. Marina prepared for sleep, exchanging the hotel robe for pajamas she had bought at the lobby gift shop. They were simple, comfortable, chosen by her for her. Another small act of autonomy that once would have seemed insignificant, but now carried symbolic weight. As she lay in the luxurious bed, Marina allowed herself one last moment of reflection before letting sleep come. She thought of Ryan, probably awake somewhere, processing how his life had crumbled in a matter of hours. She thought of Carla, still trying to understand what she had gained by conquering a ruined man. She thought of Cooper Industries, of the challenge it represented to lead a company publicly, no longer under the protection of anonymity. But mainly, Marina thought of herself, of the young woman she had been, full of dreams that were gradually suffocated, of the woman she had become, forged in silence and determination through years of devaluation, and of the person she would be now, free to write her own future without the restrictions of others' expectations. Her last thought before sleep was simple but profound. She had survived. More than that, she had triumphed. And tomorrow, when she faced the cameras and invasive questions, she would do so not as Ryan Fletcher's ex-wife, but as Marina Westbrook, executive, investor, survivor. And that, she realized as darkness enveloped her, made all the difference. The following morning brought with it a clarity Marina hadn't experienced in years. She woke before her alarm, her body naturally prepared for what was to come. Through the suite window, Portland awoke under a surprisingly clear sky, the sun breaking through the clouds in golden rays that seemed almost prophetic. The press conference was scheduled for 10 o'clock, which gave her enough time to prepare meticulously. Marina chose each piece of clothing with the same strategic precision she applied to her investments. A charcoal gray blazer over an impeccable white blouse. Perfectly cut trousers, shoes that added height without sacrificing comfort. It wasn't armor, but it came close. As she applied her makeup, her phone vibrated with a message from Kenneth Torres. Ryan had tried to obtain an injunction preventing the press conference, claiming it would harm his professional reputation before any legal proceedings were concluded. The judge had denied the request in less than an hour. Marina allowed herself a small smile in the mirror. Ryan still didn't understand that he had lost not only his job, but also the power to control the narrative. The hotel lobby was quiet when she went downstairs, only a few guests having breakfast. Marina ordered only a double espresso, her sole concession to the nervousness bubbling beneath her calm surface. She checked her documents once more as she drank her coffee, reviewing the main points she planned to address, the probable questions, and her carefully elaborated answers. Leonard Pritchard met her in the lobby at 9:15, impeccably dressed as always, but with an expression of paternal concern Marina hadn't expected. He held her shoulders gently, forcing her to look directly at him. "You don't have to do this alone, Marina. Susan and I will be there. The entire board will be by your side. But if you want to back down, there's still time. We can issue a written press statement. Avoid all the public exposure." Marina considered his words for a moment. It would be easier, certainly, less risky, but she had spent 10 years choosing the easy way, avoiding confrontation, becoming invisible. No more. "No, Leonard. It's time to show my face, to tell my own story. Ryan always controlled how I was seen, what people thought of me. That ends today." The drive to Cooper Industries was silent. Leonard driving while Marina watched the city pass by the window. Every block carried memories, good and bad. There was the coffee shop where she used to meet Ryan in the early years, when he still pretended to care about her opinions. There was the boutique where Carla worked, the display window showcasing expensive clothes Ryan had probably financed with company money. When they arrived at the Cooper Industries building, Marina saw the concentration of media vans parked out front. Journalists checking equipment, cameras being positioned. Her stomach churned, but she took a deep breath, centering herself. Every step now would be observed, analyzed, judged. But it would also be hers. The main conference room had been transformed into an improvised media center. Rows of chairs faced a small stage with a podium, microphones already positioned and tested. Marina counted at least 20 journalists, representatives from all the major Portland outlets, and some from national business publications. The story had attracted attention after all. It wasn't every day that an underestimated wife revealed herself as the mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar corporate acquisition. Susan Yang was coordinating the final technical details when Marina entered through the side door. She waved, her face showing solidarity and respect. Marcus Webb was speaking with the legal department, probably reviewing what could or could not be said publicly. Everything was happening, real and irreversible. At 10 o'clock sharp, Marcus stepped up to the podium, his presence commanding immediate silence. "Good morning. Thank you for attending on such short notice. Cooper Industries is undergoing significant changes in its leadership structure, and we'd like to be completely transparent about these developments." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "As many of you have already reported, Ryan Fletcher is no longer part of this organization, effective immediately. This decision was made following discoveries of financial irregularities that are being investigated internally and, potentially, through appropriate legal channels." A murmur swept through the room, journalists furiously taking notes or typing on laptops. Marcus raised his hand, asking for silence before continuing. "More importantly, we'd like to introduce the person responsible for bringing these irregularities to light, and who is also now our largest individual shareholder, Ms. Marina Westbrook." Marina felt all eyes turn to her as she stepped onto the stage. The cameras clicked incessantly, flashes momentarily blinding. She took her place behind the podium, her hands resting lightly on the wooden surface, projecting calm even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "Good morning," she began, her voice firm and clear. "My name is Marina Westbrook, formerly known as Marina Fletcher. Many of you are wondering who I am and how I arrived at this position. It's a complex story, but one that deserves to be told with honesty." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. 4 years ago, I discovered that my then-husband, Ryan Fletcher, was having an affair. More painful than the betrayal itself were the words I heard him say, describing me as dependent, worthless, someone who would never achieve anything on my own. In that moment, I faced a choice. I could accept that narrative, see myself through his eyes, or I could prove that I had always been more than he allowed me to be. The room was completely silent now, every person hanging on her words. Marina saw some faces showing surprise, others comprehension, still others calculating the angles of the story they would write. I chose to prove it. I took a modest inheritance and began studying investments with the same seriousness as any professional. I worked secretly, not out of dishonesty, but because I needed space to grow without the shadow of others' expectations. Over 4 years, I transformed $25,000 into a multi-million-dollar portfolio, eventually acquiring a majority stake in this company. A journalist in the front row raised her hand, and Marina gestured for her to speak. "Jenna Morrison," from the Portland Tribune. "There are allegations that you used insider information obtained through your husband. How do you respond to that?" Marina had anticipated that question. "Every transaction I made is documented and has been reviewed by 3 independent law firms. I never accessed company systems, never stole confidential documents. What I did was study public reports, analyze market trends, and make informed decisions. If casual conversations at home gave me general insights into the industry, that doesn't constitute insider trading any more than any executive's spouse who pays attention to their partner's career." Another hand went up. "Michael Chen, from Business Weekly. Do you see this as revenge against your ex-husband?" The question was direct, even confrontational. Marina took a deep breath before responding. "I see this as justice, Michael. Ryan embezzled corporate funds to finance his extramarital affair, a clear violation of policy and ethics. He also spent years belittling me, isolating me from friends and family, telling me I was incapable and worthless. Was it revenge to finally defend myself? Was it revenge to rebuild my self-esteem and prove my competence? I'll let everyone draw their own conclusions. The questions kept coming, each more incisive than the last. Someone asked about her plans for Cooper Industries, and Marina outlined her vision for expansion and innovation, with the same detail she had presented to the board. Another asked about the ongoing divorce, and she replied that it was a personal matter being handled through appropriate legal channels. An hour later, when Marcus finally concluded the press conference, Marina felt as if she had run a marathon. Her legs trembled slightly as she descended from the stage, but she maintained her upright posture, her expression composed. Journalists were still shouting questions as she was escorted out of the room, but Marina didn't answer anything more. In the empty hallway, away from the cameras, she finally allowed her shoulders to relax. Susan was by her side in seconds, offering a cold bottle of water which Marina gratefully accepted. "You were phenomenal," Susan said with genuine admiration. "Honest yet professional. Vulnerable yet strong. Exactly the right tone." Leonard agreed, joining them. "The story will spread fast, Marina. Prepare for intense attention in the coming weeks. But you set the narrative on your own terms. That's significant." Marina drank the water, letting the cold liquid calm her from the inside out. Through the window she could see some of the media vans starting to leave, journalists rushing to file their stories before their competitors. Her story was out there now, being dissected and analyzed by thousands of people who would never know her personally. And yet, strangely, Marina felt freer than ever. Her phone vibrated with a message from Claire. "I saw the press conference live. I'm so proud of you I could cry. In fact, I am crying. You're my hero." Marina smiled, typing a quick reply. Then there were messages from people she hadn't heard from in years, old college friends, acquaintances who had disappeared during her marriage to Ryan, all offering support, admiration, requests to reconnect. But the message that made Marina pause came from an unknown number. She opened it hesitantly, prepared for more anger from Carla or some attack from Ryan. Instead, she found words she hadn't expected. "Ms. Westbrook, my name is Patricia Hammond, and I am the executive director of a foundation that supports women entrepreneurs. Your story resonates with so many women who have been underestimated and diminished. We would like to discuss the possibility of you becoming a mentor and speaker. Women need to hear that it's possible to rebuild, that strength doesn't have to be loud or obvious to be real. Please consider." Marina read the message 3 times, a new kind of purpose beginning to form in her mind. She had rebuilt her life by focusing on revenge and validation. But perhaps there was something greater waiting, a chance to use her experience to help other women find their own strength. She replied to Patricia, agreeing to meet the following week. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Vanessa Chen called to discuss her transition, excited and impressed by the media coverage. Lawyers updated Marina on the divorce proceedings, which were moving quickly now that Ryan had little bargaining power. The house in Lake Oswego would be sold, the profits divided in a way that recognized the unequal contributions to the marriage. When she finally returned to the hotel that night, Marina was exhausted but strangely energized. She ordered room service again, then called Claire, talking about everything and nothing for hours as they used to do when they were younger. Before going to sleep, Marina walked to the suite window, looking at Portland illuminated under the night sky. 4 years ago, she had heard her husband laugh at her, diminish her, dismiss her as irrelevant. In that moment of acute pain, something had broken within her, but something had also been born. She had become the woman she always had the potential to be, not despite the betrayal and humiliation, but through the determination to never again allow anyone to define her worth. Ryan was somewhere in this city, processing the ruin of his career and reputation. Carla, too, realizing that she had gained not a prize, but a man ruined in every sense. Marina no longer felt anger toward them, just a kind of quiet indifference, the liberation of finally letting go of a burden she had carried for too long. Marina touched the cold glass of the window, her reflection looking back at her. This woman, with strength etched into every line of her face, with purpose shining in her eyes, was who she had chosen to become. And tomorrow, and every day after that, she would keep choosing, keep building, keep proving that the biggest mistake anyone can make is to underestimate a woman who has decided to rewrite her own story. The future stretched out before her, uncertain, but full of possibilities that were entirely hers to shape. And for the first time in a decade, Marina wasn't afraid of what would come next. She was ready.